Tara Fela Durotoye is a Nigerian lawyer and entrepreneur in the beauty industry. She founded the first bridal directory, International Quality Makeup Studios, and the country's first makeup school in 1999, making her a pioneer in the field of bridal makeup in Nigeria. She founded the Makeup Studio, the Makeup Academy, and the Tara product line. She is also an expert in cosmetic distribution, retail, and channel management, with over 10,000 salespeople spread across Africa, almost 300 unique products, 26 storefronts, and 14 beauty schools. Her business has locations in Ghana, Senegal, and Benin. Over 1,500 students have graduated from the House of Tara Academy, with many of them now working for major worldwide cosmetic companies. Welcome to SUSU Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It is an absolute pleasure to have you. We've been on this journey a little bit.
I know.
We have. COVID has come and gone.
Yes.
And finally, it's about 2 years.
Yes,
2 years
more than
later,
2 years.
I have managed to get you into the SUSU seat.
I know, and I'm very, very pleased to be here. And thank you so much for your patience.
Honestly, I'm the one who should be thanking you because I've been looking forward to this conversation. You know, many people who've been watching my content for a number of years now know how genuinely excited I get when I get to speak to the people that I've been watching from a distance. It's such an important thing for me because, and it's one of the reasons why podcasts like this exist, is because the conversations that I was looking for when I literally got off that flight and landed in the middle of Lagos, looking for my African dream. Where did I go to find those conversations? The first place was online and looking for women who were doing things that I was aspiring to do and demonstrating for me the roadmap of what I needed to do in order to get myself off the ground in a place. And what's possible in a place that I've never, ever experienced, right? So your content is, again, one of those content I came across, and I've been watching you sort of grow and expand over the years. And I'm just sitting there thinking, wow, so this is how you do business in Africa. So it's a pleasure to have you on the seat. So I wanted to kind of just delve into it a little bit. Now, this season on SUSU Podcast, we are focused on manufacturing and industrialization of Africa. Now, I know that you're not necessarily a manufacturer yourself, but I think within the value chain of that subject matter, I think you do play a role. And I want us to delve into your journey so far, you know, how you've come about, the business model that you've come about, and where you think that we should be playing based on your experience in manufacturing and industrialization. So let's start off with, what is your understanding of industrialization? Break it down for me, the way you view it from your perspective.
I think it's responding to the advancements that we see. I think it's being aware of how things have become in terms of modernization and how we can do things more efficiently, faster, how we can, ensure that our products are now available across the world and become more global. And that's how I see the industrialization. And I think that we as Africans are playing such a huge role in that because of the youth population that we have. And this is the only continent with that number of young people. And the young people are desperate, they're innovative, they're hungry for new. Fortunately, we haven't fixed our governance, and governance has become such a huge limitation for what we can achieve as a continent. And I think until we fix that, it limits us to a large extent. Of course, many industries have advanced and moved forward with or without the role of government. But the question is, what would they have done better or more or faster or easier if governance was fixed?
Interesting. So just going back to reading, when I read your bio and people think about, TFD, how would you describe what it is that you do from your own words? Not how somebody like me looking from the outside in would describe you. Just give me your own title for what it is that you do.
I think Chief Inspiration, Chief Developmental Officer, in a sense, my work within House of Tara, my work within all the other aspects and spheres that I operate in, I'm majorly inspiring, majorly igniting, majorly activating, majorly developing people, and I think that's what my sweet spot is, and it's also what I enjoy doing, and so therefore it's something that comes very easily to me, and makes it easy for me to also succeed in those areas, because those are also the areas of my strength.
So I see you as somebody who has quite a vast amount of strengths. You don't fit into your typical mold of, your typical, entrepreneur. This is what they do. This is why I asked you that question, because I wanted to kind of see your perspective, how you view yourself, right? And that title that you just described now, I see that sort of stretching beyond just what you do for a living. Right, and just kind of from where I'm standing, you've got the makeup, you have the academy, you have, the what I'll probably call the lifestyle, right? Emphasis on family, and then you have the faith, right? And all those things for me encompasses who you are as, well, maybe a brand per se, right? Okay. So how have you evolved into being, this individual that has worn many hats, and how are you managing to sort of, have a definition of yourself through all of those, I don't know, shades.
Expressions.
Yeah, many expressions, right?
I think first of all, life is about growth. When we stop growing, then we start dying. And as long as we're growing, we are also evolving, and evolution is taking place all the time. And it's interesting to see, you asked me a question just before we got on, and the question was, tell me a little bit about how do you think being an entrepreneur has become easier? And I said, in some areas, yes, easier, in others, harder. And
what are some of those areas?
In terms of the areas that are easier, well, you now have a product that is tested and tried. You've piloted it. People know where to find the product. Is great. People know where to find that product. You're generating money from it. Those are the things that have now become easy, right? And as you deliver good quality product, new ideas are birthed from it, and then you create more products that meet the needs of the customer. The customer now finds where to buy it, where to get it, and they pay for it, and that whole cycle just keeps growing and growing. That is what has become easier. But what has become difficult is, for example, the uncertainties of today. 5 years ago, in 2015, 2017, 2018, 2017, 2016, if anyone had told me that the world was going to change the way it has, I would not have believed it, right? In so many things, so many ways. And so the uncertainty, whether it's in the inflation, right? Whether it's the Forex issues that we're having to deal, we've always had to deal, but at a different level than we ever have. And that degree of uncertainty is at a deeper level. And I would have thought that I would have it on lockdown. I would have it sorted. You've been here for this long, so therefore you kind of know how things would be. However,
that is a thought.
Yeah. However, things just changed suddenly, and I didn't know, and a lot of people didn't know. More people didn't know than people that knew what was next. And so I think in a sense, those are some of the things that are different, that are easier, and the things that are harder.
Some of the things are harder. Yeah. Okay, so Nigeria right now,
I was talking about growth, right? And I was talking about the evolution that comes with growth. And sometimes as you evolve, then you begin to explore, and you begin to you see other areas and other parts of you that you're yearning to express. And that's what's happened to me. So I started off as a young lady who started this business, and then the evolution took place, and I'm no longer that young girl that I was, a very skinny girl that, wasn't afraid to take new take new territories, expanded my business across the country, wasn't afraid to go to the north, the south, the east, the west. It didn't matter. It just, we can have 100 stores and have those dreams and aspirations and the audacity to expand in a country where, foreign brands would have come in and not be able to do so, right? And then you start to grow and then the countries begins to change and you're now hearing of kidnapping and you're hearing of some of these dangerous things that are happening, and you no longer dream about your big expansions across the country like you did because governance hasn't been fixed. Do you see? And so that evolution now gets you more, for example, deeper into your faith, because you realize if government messes you up, you've got to find something that you know for a fact that will be stable. And for me, it's my faith. It's the God that I serve that I know for sure that if the government messes me up, this one I know for sure is a constant. So it causes you to be deep. And I think that's what happens with the evolution. Things change. You have children who are babies and then they become men, and the things that they need and their desires and aspirations are different from what it was before. And then you now have to become a parent of an adult, and one adult, and then two adults, and then the needs that the kids have change. That's where growth happens, and that's that evolution that you begin to see again. So I guess we should all know that life is really about growth, and that will always continue to evolve, and we should embrace the evolution that comes with it.
But how do you sort of navigate between the hats though? Because you're taking one hat off, or
Yes.
are you wearing three hats at the same time?
No, I'm still the same person. And I think it's the same person, but just finding expressions. I think the reason why sometimes people will find it difficult and think about hats, it's simply because who they are here is not who they are there. So I'm the same. I'm still the same woman who's passionate and loves life and loves plants and loves nature. And I'm very in touch with my sensibilities. If I'm sitting with you, I pay attention. I can see I almost can see your mind, right? Because I'm present, right? It's the same way I'm fascinated by you. I'm fascinated by David. I'm fascinated by Eukarya. And so I'm intrigued and I'm interested in people. That same person is the same person who operates in a place of faith, where yet again, I'm intrigued by God and all the things that make God who he is. And I'm willing to explore. I want to grow in that relationship. The same way I apply it with my children, that each child is different. Each child is unique. They all have their different strengths and their weaknesses and the things that make them special in my space and what they bring to my family. And I'm fascinated by them. So I want to spend time with my son who's in Boston, because I know that we can explore the US together. And I know that his perspective on life is so unique and different. And I can't wait for us to travel, right? But the same way I want to spend time with my little one, right, who's at home and who's very talkative and very in touch with his empathy side, and loves the country, is very patriotic, loves football and is a Liverpool fan. And I see all of them and I just want to explore. It's the same way I want to explore my husband, and it's the same way I want to explore my business.
That's really, really fascinating. So where that enthusiasm and that sense of I need to be present. Mm-hmm. Where do you think that was birthed from?
I think it's part of my composition. As a child, I sat, and if I wanted to drink a bottle of a soft drink, I would read the label. I would read.
Interesting.
Yes, and I remember what logos look like as I pay attention. And I have two children who are exactly like that. When they were little, when you drive them, they don't fall asleep in the car. They look through the window. And they're always telling you something that happened that they saw last week, 2 weeks ago. Oh, Mom, when we were driving down this road. I'm like, how do you know what happened? People live here. No, people don't live there. People live there. I saw a man taking his bath 2 weeks ago because they, they're quite present. So I think it's part of my nature, but it's also the thing that is required for me to walk in my gifts, right? And being present and empathy is part of the things I operate in. I'm an activator. Developmental means I need to know the areas where people need development and to be able to bring that to the table. The only way to do so is if you're present, if you're paying attention, and if you care for people.
Talking about caring, the space in manufacturing in Nigeria right now, I think, generally across Africa, but specifically Nigeria, you started a brand, and I'm guessing that when you started, very much like people like me, there's a lot of discoveries that you made along the way. Majority of those discoveries are usually things that are not going to work, right? You stumble across, let's say the lack of this or the lack of that. When you wanted to start your business, and then you talked about you were doing makeup, and then for makeup you were thinking about the actual product itself. When you went searching, I know very much of the story. You went searching for your makeup, and you made a lot of discoveries, and there was a lot of setbacks. How did you sort of process the discovery that Nigeria wasn't going to necessarily give you that manufacturing opportunity that perhaps you might, like many of us when we start out, assume we might have? Because I had a conversation with you, and I was a little bit shocked that you made me realize that we don't actually manufacture
color cosmetics
in Nigeria. Yes. Now, I know there's a lot of issues as to why, but it never occurred to me that something so simple in my mind would be something that we've not even explored, especially something that is such in high demand. With all the Owambe parties that we attend, why are we not manufacturing makeup in Nigeria? And what are the ways that the industry itself needs to start thinking about exploring the opportunities that it provides that it's currently not exploring?
So first of all, it'll be great for us to be able to do that, but there's infrastructure limitations, and the infrastructure limitations cut across power, for example, right? When you build a factory, you need to be 100% certain that the production that you're going to be churning out every day, because that factory needs to be functioning, the number of products that need to be churned out on a daily basis, you also have the capacity to transport them from one location to the other. And so if you think about transporting across Nigeria, at a time where we felt that there were things that were being fixed, so we then had more airports, and which meant that if you had more airports, you had more airlines. It means you could air freight your goods from one location to the other. There was a time where we saw the growth in the aviation industry, and those were signs, right? We saw advancement in local transportation as well, right? And we saw more brands that were being built, and we saw advancement. But many of those things have also shrunk. So we lost many of those airlines today, right, that existed at a time where we were seeing growth. And which means that if you have fewer number of airlines, then the cost of transporting these things from place to place becomes even more expensive. So the question for you is, where do I have control over the cost that when I'm creating this product? If I build a factory, then these costs are going to be very high. But then I have to think about, how do I distribute it such a way that it's everywhere, vis-a-vis the cost of producing here locally. The question then is, why don't you outsource that manufacturing to someone who's serving 100 to 200 customers across the world, who doesn't need his factory to produce for you every single day, because he's spread his cost across multiple customers, right? So if I'm manufacturing Tara product, is Tara, in the quantities I want to manufacture, is it sufficient to keep that factory running? And if that's not enough, do we have sufficient number of other brands? So to now, I've been in business for over 20 years, and we only have maybe in the last 3 years seen a significant growth in the number of local brands. And they can be more than 10.
In terms of,
cosmetics, color cosmetics, lipstick, foundations.
That can be found for local consumption.
Not just for local consumption, being created by locals, right? Okay. So I'm a makeup artist, I built a brand, I understand what customers need, I create a line of product. If I build a factory, then I need to be able to service all those people for it to make economic sense, right? And we still do not have that advancement, as opposed to in a country like Germany, UK, US, or China, where there are multiple brands, and many of these brands have been around for many years. They're mature brands. They're constantly innovating. So if I built a factory, then I can serve them. But unfortunately, we also don't have transportation across the continent, right? So if I wanted to travel to Gabon, I would first of all have to land in Lomé before going to Gabon on the other side.
There's definitely a problem with connectivity in terms of across Africa.
So then the question is, okay, do you want to now have other brands from outside of Nigeria that you can be manufacturing for? Yet again, the industry is not mature enough. And so we wait for the time where things begin to change and therefore make this possible.
So in terms of the makeup space itself, do you think there'll ever be a time such where we can produce locally here, not necessarily for those who are distributing locally, but people who are also looking across Africa for manufacturers who can give them pretty much the quality that you could probably get in somewhere like Germany, England, or even China? Yeah,
it's definitely possible. But there are certain things that need to be fixed. Connectivity across the continent, payment platforms. It's still a real issue, right? We still are not able to. It's difficult for someone from South Africa to pay for an item in Nigeria, right? It's easier for you to pay for an item in the US and the UK because we still have payment platforms that are not yet in sync across, right? I've just seen that Paystack has just gotten something, some kind of regulatory approval from the Central Bank of Kenya. But Paystack has been in business for, more years than you would imagine. That it's only now that they're able to sort this out in East Africa. So we need to sort payment across the continent. We need to sort out transportation across the continent, train,
logistics, air freight.
Yeah, because they would say to you, for example, we use a lot of flowers here in Nigeria for weddings and what have you. If you ask the florists, they're having to buy Kenyan flowers from Netherlands.
Interesting. So Kenya is producing flowers in the Netherlands?
No, Kenya is producing flowers in Kenya, but it's easier for Kenya to send the flowers to the Netherlands and Netherlands to send to Nigeria, because sending from Kenya to Nigeria is harder.
That is so right? So disturbing.
So there's some numbers I don't have them right now, but the amount of transactions that we do within the continent is like maybe a quarter of the sort of transactions that we do in Europe, from Africa to Europe, Africa to the US. We do much more business than we do across the continent. Continent is like a little amount, a very minute amount. Yeah.
And what do you think really needs to change? Like where should we be looking at this? And I know that in the world of politics, you definitely have a voice. But is this a political issue that we should constantly be looking at governance in terms of fixing, or is this something that we, as entrepreneurs ourselves, that we need to be looking at, ways to leapfrog perhaps? What would be the traditional solutions to these things? How do you see this ever changing?
I think it's both. I think it's both entrepreneurs finding solutions, and I know a few who are already working on payment platforms pathways that will help us to leapfrog around that area. But I don't know anyone who's working on logistics across the continent. There's still a lot of focus on, let's finish Nigeria. We haven't sorted out Nigeria. Nigeria is such a big country. So there's a place for entrepreneurs to find opportunities to now create solutions, right? But it's also a huge part of governance. It's a huge part. And there's still many African countries there are very few African countries with the leadership that Africa really needs. You can count them at the tip of your finger, and we need to fix that. Africans need to understand and to take more control over what happens in the political space, and not sit down and wait for the cabals of any country to determine who will be the next president or be the next governor of the state or a mayor or what have you. That needs to change, and I'm hoping that the next generation of young people will become more active and therefore and become less self-centered in their choices, where we're not choosing because of how we're personally benefiting, but how the entire country will benefit from it.
It's actually very, I was saying earlier that, as I was listening to you speaking, it's very worrisome that we, at this stage, particularly for my generation, I would think that we were at that point now where we were able to bridge a lot of these gaps. And maybe it's a little bit of naivety. I don't know. When you sort of come into a space, you think, let's just change it.
Of course.
Let's change it. I can't take this anymore. I'm going to just do my bit and it's going to change overnight. That burn and that fire is there. And when you talk about young people waking up and doing their part and getting involved, you know, and I had a conversation earlier. You said, you're part of the problem, Demi. And my heart sank a little bit because a part of me understood, and it's a conversation I'm constantly having with my peers, that I do in fact live in a bubble, not because I'm sort of intentionally doing it. I just happen to find, and I'm very aware that there's many parts of Nigeria, many parts of across Africa that I'm not even privy to.
Yeah. And understandably so.
Yeah, I'm not privy to, and many more people like me do exist, where we do have that burn to that desire and that burn to make a difference and to change things, but without fully understanding the how extensive the problem is, that urgency to get involved, get stuck in, to try and make a difference and let your vote be counted and your voice be heard. It can be a little bit disconnected for me, because again, it's like, how can you possibly live in a bubble and still find a way to play a key role in contribution to the changes? I'm not even understanding how you're even going to contribute to the changes as we're sitting here talking right now. And how do we begin to change manufacturing and industrialization of Africa? Well, it goes back to good governance, it goes back to a little bit of entrepreneurship as well, but it also goes into those who are raising their voices to ensure that we're mounting the pressure that is required to demand that change. But that goes back to my question, as a young person coming into this space, trying to find your footing, understanding that yes, you do have a passion, you want to, but you have no idea how you can possibly contribute to this thing. What would be your advice on how you get involved? Because again, like you said, there is no industrialization without good governance, especially good governance that's hindering you from getting all those core foundations and infrastructures in places that's going to enable you to do the good work.
Yeah. So I do think that, I look at my path and how engaged I've always been, and it's not a function, and I've never waited to be successful to be part of making a difference. And you can make a difference in many ways, but I think for where we are in Nigeria, you have to make a difference at multiple levels. So yes, you have to participate in politics. You have to know who's your local government chairman, right? And participate in the next election, because it determines what happens in the gutters, right? The drainage system in that. And to vote, and then not just to vote, but also to engage in that local government, because that's where the governance starts from where you are.
How might they be able to engage?
So, for example, each local government has an office. You live, for example, in an estate of 5-6 people, and you galvanize people within your small community, and you go and visit your chairman when he wins the elections.
Before or after he wins?
Let's imagine that he's won now.
Yes.
Right? You go and visit. Oh, so and so and so. So we live here, and we just wanted to congratulate you for whatever, exchange numbers, and you'll be surprised because they're not used to people doing that, right? He will give you his number, very likely. And then from time to time, you can engage to say, what are the plans? How can we support? How can we help? In other cases, you be part of electing, be part of voting. I remember the last local government elections, the place was completely empty. People didn't come out to vote. They were sitting at home watching TV or sleeping or cooking or doing stuff and forgetting that the food you're cooking today, you're going to eat it
10x, or you're going to eat it also at 10x the price if you don't get involved in what's going on.
And you don't know whether the country will even be safe enough for your children to live in the near future. So that's even at that level. But in terms of, your community, like you're having conversations with your driver and staff, ask them if they're voting. Ask them if they've gotten their PVC. You know that you saw me today. And one of the first questions I asked you was, do you have your PVC?
Do you have your PVC?
Yes. That's making a difference. And you'd say, oh, but I just one person. No, I've gotten the culture of doing it. I also give the example of how I went to do I went to the spa, and I know the therapist. I know who she voted for the last election. And the question is, how did I know? Because I engaged, because I asked, you're from Chibok? She says, yes, that's Borno State, a Christian community in the northern part of Nigeria. And I asked, did you guys vote the last election? She said, yes, this is who we voted for the last time. And this is how long it took us to go and vote, what time we left our homes. So it's just by engaging and asking people, right? And now I've said to her, are you guys going to vote this time? And so I was not able to transfer my blah, blah, blah. My family would vote. And then I ask her, do you know who they're voting for this time? She says, no. So here I am campaigning for my own candidates, and I'm doing it in the small ways and in the big ways. Every employee of House of Tara knows that I've asked them, if I see you, except I didn't see you, if I see you, I would ask. And if you ask any employee of House of Tara, at some point somebody in House of Tara sent a text to say there are many staff who don't have PVCs. The person could send me a text because she knows it's important to me. Do you see? This is how we make a difference. It's in the small things, and it's also in the big things. It's in also the projects that we're working. Many years ago, maybe 12 years ago, my husband and I, we worked on what we call the Mushi Makeover project, and we just used our influence to galvanize 1,000 houses in Mushin to be painted by ordinary Nigerian young people who bought one bucket of paint. And I showed up on a Saturday morning, right? And we stood there and we painted houses. We just painted houses and kept painting until we were done with the entire major street. This is making a difference. What we're saying is we're not going to wait for government, right? We're going to
these are fantastic examples on not necessarily waiting for government to fix all the problems. But, in the areas that you feel that the government, we don't have the power to do certain things, what are those areas that if we were to really hone down on the most important area that we want the government to really come through, what would you say that would be?
It's not one.
It's not one.
No. Especially where we are, it's not one. It's not one. It will be everyone where we are, because we're still so behind. So catching up to do. Yeah. I wouldn't be able to answer that.
It's funny because there's a lot of content that I've been sort of consuming recently, and particularly for this season's podcast subject, and just looking at what are the areas in industrialization in order for us to be able to move forward and catch up, because we are, like you said, very behind in so many ways. Within the sectors itself, but how do we begin to learn from those who have gone before us? Because we're not trying to copy paste at this stage. I think we're so far behind we cannot copy paste.
No.
So it's a question of what are the things that we now need to do in terms of the way in which we even think about manufacturing, think about industrialization.
It's technology
that needs to be different from the way perhaps it was thought of before.
I think a lot of us, generations ahead of us, we didn't have access to technology that we have today. And the way to leapfrog will be to embrace technology at a faster rate than we even thought. And that will be the only way we're going to move faster, or move to be able to catch up. And I'm happy to see that a lot of young people are very, very inclined to technology there. It's almost as though, I didn't use a computer until I was invested in my business, right? But there are many young people today who have used computers all their lives. I was saying to someone the other day, write something down. And the person was struggling with writing it down. And I was like, what's the big deal? Just write it. But I forgot the person is not used to writing. They're used to typing on their phone. And this is
so true. Yeah. I think I'm exactly like that as well. Yes. It's a generation of typing as opposed to getting a paper and pen.
Right. Yeah. So I just thought, there's a paper there. You just take the paper and just write. But the person is struggling to no, I need to get my phone. No, you don't need to get your phone. But this is a different group, age and time. And so that thing that you are more inclined to do, to function in, is what you need to engage. I mean, I was on Tech Cabal today, the platform on Instagram, and to just see the growth that has taken place in that technology space, right? Even within the continent, I feel like we can take that and apply it in manufacturing so that we can move forward and faster.
Well, I think that would be a wonderful thing for me to say, even if for me to even witness, because even in my business, technology is always something that we're trying to integrate into our way of doing manufacturing. Really, because you really want to get more efficient. Efficiency is one of those things we're constantly trying to keep up with, and it can be very, very difficult. Again, it's what comes first, the chicken or the egg. You don't have light, but we're looking at utilizing technology to leapfrog. It's a very, very challenging problem, and again, it's how do we begin to think about it in a different way, considering the setbacks that we currently are facing. And sometimes I don't even have an answer, and I'm constantly posing the question, but not necessarily, just basically hoping that something would just pop in as innovative answer somewhere.
Yes, and I'm sure it would happen, and I'm sure sometimes it may not happen in one sitting. Like you said, pop, those aha moments, and you're like, yes, that's exactly what we should be doing. And sometimes it'll be two things that two different people have said that they didn't connect, but because you're the listener, you're able to connect. So fingers crossed, let's see.
Well, let's hope that anybody who's will listen has some ideas for us as to how we should be thinking about this. Because for me, I would love to see a Nigeria where we are utilizing our resources properly, because we have an abundance of it. One thing I was saying to a friend recently was that we need to learn as a nation to get better at negotiating our own resources. We are so poor at that. We just literally give it away at the drop of a hat. And we don't actually take into account how reliant the rest of the world is on our resources. The moment you cut that resource,
but it's still back to leadership.
It goes back to leadership. And it's maybe we should just stop being entrepreneurs and become leaders now, and just maybe just say, okay, well,
we need to fix it, and we need to go into positions of authority where we can make the difference. And we're already seeing some of that happening already. We talked earlier of people who you knew as entrepreneurs, and then in the last few weeks, they've transitioned into politics, because we need an enabling environment to be able to succeed as entrepreneurs, and if that's not fixed, we're going to be here going round around the bend.
Well, so there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of initiatives going on. I know the African Development Bank is doing quite a lot in terms of infrastructure development at the moment. There's a lot of people sort of looking at energy resources and things like that to try and bridge the gaps. I know there's transportation. I'm not sure how advanced and how far we've come in the last 2 years in terms of the transportation space, but hopefully within this season, we're going to explore with some of our guests to talk about that as well. But if you say to me, TFD, if I were to ask you, if there's anything that our listeners, you would like our listeners to know about you that nobody probably knows about you before, what would it be?
That nobody knows.
That you'd like them to know.
That I'd like them to know. That I'm a good cook.
Really?
Yes.
Well, I kind of got that sense, though.
Oh, really?
I didn't get the sense you will be a bad one.
Okay, maybe I should have said that I'm a bad cook.
Then I'd be like, oh, it makes sense.
Yes,
You're so busy, of course it makes sense. But yeah, I never know, really. What's your favorite thing to cook?
Well, my kids love my coconut rice.
Coconut rice?
Yes, they love it. But I mean, I don't think that's my favorite in terms of, I make very good banga soup. Banga is my traditional, something that's traditional to the Niger Delta part of Nigeria where I'm from. It's palm kernel soup, right?
Palm kernel, that's palm oil, no?
Yes, it's
okay.
it's a form of yes, but it's done in a way that makes it edible and very nice.
But is it healthy?
No.
High in cholesterol, I can imagine.
Very, very, very high in cholesterol. But that is one thing. And then it's another one called babu fufu. So babu fufu is like pepper soup and okra.
I have never heard of that.
Yes, but it's
Pronounce
very nice
that
with
again?
seafood. Babu fufu.
Bagbo fufu.
Yes.
Is that Yoruba?
No, that's shakiri.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. So babu fufu is bagbai is pepper soup. That's what we call pepper soup. Fufu is it draws.
The okra in it.
The okra in it. Yes. So it's one of our delicacies as well, and it's one of my favorite things to cook. It's very easy to cook, but it's also very tasty, and you just never forget. But I'm very connected to my senses, so if I'm gonna eat babu fufu, then it's just like we're taking over the world with this babu fufu. But my kids I've always loved my coconut rice. So yeah.
What do you normally eat your coconut rice with?
Or
is it just coconut rice by itself?
Do as usual.
No stew? Or sauce?
But wow. That's a very Yoruba thing, to have everything with the sauce.
I didn't know. I thought it was Chinese as well. You couldn't eat everything with your sauce and little stew thing.
Not my coconut rice though. It's just even I just thinking about it right now and looking at it. Unfortunately, I don't eat rice anymore. So hey.
Oh dear. Let's not delve into that one. Let's not delve into that one. So moving forward, what is the future looking like for you in terms of your entrepreneurial journey? I know that you are very forward thinking. You wouldn't have gotten this far had you not been. And I know that you still have ambition to go incredibly much further. So where's your thought process now in terms of the future for you in terms of
I think it's really about lives. I've put a number down of the number of lives that I want to be able to touch as an entrepreneur, as an entrepreneurial solution. I'm going to be 50 in 5 years, and I have a number I'm not going to share. But there's a strategy for how do I meet that number of people across the continent, because entrepreneurship changed my life, and I want to find ways, how do I help other African countries, other people in other African countries, like I've done in Nigeria, to explore entrepreneurship and then to see the impact of that in every country.
That's really powerful. That's super, super fun. And I can't convince you to give me the number.
Never. I'm superstitious.
There you are. Wow, that's actually very noble. Particularly in a time where it's very difficult to find that.
But we have to find what inspires us, and I think that when we're created with sets of strengths, abilities that are part of the solution that we bring to the world. And until we're able to identify how those things connect, we can really live a fulfilling life. And so for me, it has to be something that helps me to explore my gifts, the things that explore my strengths, and gives me inspiration to do. So the number gives me inspiration, but lives gives me inspiration, because like when you asked me, the first thing I said was I'm an igniter. And I ignite things, and I activate things, and those are my strengths. And I need to find ways to explore that, express that in a way that also inspires me.
So if I were to go back to 1990, in fact, let's go back to 1998, before we embarked on this journey that has brought you here today. And the igniter in you back then, and if you had any message for her, what would you tell her?
Dear little igniter, embrace this gift, because it's going to make the world a better place. It's going to make people better, and as a result, make the world a better place. Embrace it. Be excited about it. Be aware of it, and see it as your superpower, because it truly is your superpower.
Fantastic. Tara, it's been an absolute pleasure sitting and talking with you.
Always.
Did I just get a little shiver? I think I might have gotten a little shiver. Yeah, a little bit. That was powerful. That's a great note to end the podcast on. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you deeply. And for you guys watching, I hope this episode has been has given you a shiver as much as it's given me one. It's always powerful for me to continue having these conversations, because it's from these conversations that you guys can get a little bit of insight just to kind of take you that little bit further and closer to your dream. Thank you so much for tuning in today, guys. And as usual, please do take care of yourself, and don't forget to be extraordinary in the way that only you can be. Take care, guys.